Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to, cut through the noise and get straight to the good stuff.
Exactly.
And if you've ever looked at a French wine label, admired the heritage, but then maybe paused, a little confused by names that sound, well, almost identical.
Happens all the time, doesn't it?
It really does. We've all been there staring at two bottles thinking, hang on, are these the same thing? Or just related?
It's one of those delightful quirks of the French appellation system, isn't it? Names that sound so close but actually represent totally different styles, different worlds of flavor.
Right, but that's where the real fun is, I think, understanding those differences.
It really opens up the diversity of French wine.
Absolutely. And today we're tackling maybe the classic example of this, Pouilly-Fumé and Pouilly-Fuissé.
Yes, the two Pouillys.
They sound so similar, you could easily mix them up. But by the end of this deep dive, you won't just know the difference.
You'll understand why they're different and why each one is, frankly, pretty magnificent on its own terms.
That's the plan. Consider this your shortcut to getting really savvy about these two wines. We're going to unpack everything.
Yep. We'll look at their terroirs, the grapes involved, which is key, the winemaking styles, and what they actually taste like.
Get ready for some aha moments, because understanding these nuances, it really is key to appreciating French wine more deeply. Let's start with Pouilly-Fumé.
Pouilly-Fumé.
Okay.
Just the name itself sort of suggests elegance, minerality.
It does.
This is white wine from the heart of the Loire Valley. And you could argue it's the ultimate expression of Sauvignon Blanc from a very specific place.
And it has quite a history, doesn't it? The area around Pouilly-Loire, viticulture goes way back.
Centuries, yeah. Vines have been there forever, basically. But it was really in the 19th century that Sauvignon Blanc became the star. It sort of pushed out other white grapes.
Now, the name fumé meaning smoked, that's always intrigued me. Where does that actually come from? There are a couple of ideas, right?
Yeah, a couple of theories. One is quite poetic, actually. It refers to the fleur de vigne. It's this sort of delicate, whitish, almost powdery bloom or mist that you see on Sauvignon Blanc grapes when they're perfectly ripe. It gives them a kind of subtly smoked look.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that image. But there's another theory, too, the one linked to the soil.
Right, the more sensory theory, maybe? It connects fumé directly to the dominant soil type there, silex, flintstone.
Ah, the flint.
Exactly. The idea is that if you strike flintstones together, get sparks, obviously, but also this distinct smell, like gunpowder or smoke.
Right, I know that smell.
And the theory is that this characteristic of the soil directly translates into the wine, giving it that signature gunflint note, sometimes called pedernera in Portuguese.
So it's not just a story, it's something you can actually smell and taste in the wine.
Precisely. That smoky mineral edge is often seen as the hallmark of real Pouilly-Fumé. It's what sets it apart, as that layer of complexity. It's like the earth speaking directly through the grape.
Okay, so let's dig into that terroir more. We know it's a continental, temperate climate, but the Loire River, how important is that really?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Think of the river as this massive temperature moderator, a huge thermal battery.
Okay.
It absorbs the sun's heat during the day and then releases it slowly overnight. This smooths out the temperature extremes, which you'd otherwise get further inland. It creates a milder microclimate.
That makes sense, for slower ripening.
Exactly. Slow, balanced ripening. And those morning mists you often see near the river.
Yeah, they're not just pretty.
Not at all. They provide vital humidity, especially in spring and autumn, which can help the vines avoid water stress. But more than that, some believe the humidity actually enhances the aromatic expression of the Sauvignon Blanc.
Interesting, like it brings out those citrus notes, the minerality.
Yeah, maybe sharpens those classic aromas, including that fumé character. Of course, it's not all easygoing. Spring frosts are a real danger, hail too. Growers are always battling the elements.
Right. Okay, let's get to the soils themselves, the geological secrets. We mentioned silex, the flint. What does it do besides lending that smoky note?
Silex is definitely the poster child soil for Pouilly-Fumé. You find it mainly on the higher slopes with good sun exposure. It's stony, doesn't hold much water, drains incredibly well.
Okay.
Its special trick is absorbing heat during the day and radiating it back at night.
Right.
Like a little storage heater for the vines.
Right, helping the grapes ripen slowly and fully.
Exactly. And that leads not just to the gunflint aroma, but also gives the wines amazing structure, elegance, and crucially, the ability to age really well.
Wines from silex can really last then.
Oh, absolutely. They have real backbone.
Fascinating. And then there's Kimmeridgian limestone. I always connect that with Chablis. Is it the same stuff here?
It's basically the same geological layer, yeah.
Hmm.
An extension of this famous Chablis soils. It's full of ancient marine fossils from the Jurassic period.
Wow.
Like Silex, it drains well, but it also holds on to moisture deeper down, which is great for the vines in dry spells. Wines from these soils, they tend to be maybe fresher, more vibrant.
Higher acidity.
Generally, yes. Higher acidity, bright citrus, floral notes, and a definite chalky or saline minerality. They're often quite expressive when they're young.
So different soils, different styles, even within the same appellation. What about marl, the Marnes?
Marl is a mix of clay and limestone. Clay holds more water and nutrients, right?
Right.
So vines on marl might be a bit more vigorous. The wines often come across as fuller-bodied, more textural, maybe a bit richer or more unctuous.
Okay.
You might get more exuberant floral notes, maybe even some tropical hints alongside the herbaceousness. It adds richness and depth. Often producers will blend grapes from different soil types to get that perfect balance.
Makes sense. And the slopes, the topography, that must matter too.
Hugely important. Most vineyards are on gentle to moderate slopes. Good for drainage, prevents the vine's feet from getting wet, basically, reduces disease risk.
And sun exposure.
Crucial. The best sites face south or southeast, catching maximum sunlight. That's vital for photosynthesis, developing sugars, developing those all-important aromatic compounds, ensures that slow, steady ripening we talked about.
Okay, so let's talk about the grape itself here. Sauvignon Blanc. How does it express itself specifically in Pouilly-Fumé? What are the key aromas we should be looking for?
Right, so Sauvignon Blanc in Pouilly-Fumé is quite distinct, quite refined. You get more than just, say, aggressive green notes. There's often blackcurrant cassis. It adds this fruity, slightly vegetal elegance.
Okay.
Then there's boxwood, or buxo. It's a subtle, elegant herbaceousness, not like, in-your-face green pepper you might find elsewhere. Much more restrained.
And back to that signature note.
The Pedernera, the gunflint, the fumé, that smoky mineral pang that comes directly from the silex. It's the calling card.
Right.
Alongside that, you have vibrant citrus lemon, grapefruit, lime bringing freshness, and just a general minerality like wet stones or chalk, maybe even a hint of elderflower sometimes. It's complex.
So how do the winemakers capture all that? What's the approach in the vineyard and the winery? Viticulture first.
It's all about meticulous work. Controlling yields is key. They use short pruning methods like guillot, maybe thin out grape clusters if needed.
To concentrate the flavors.
Exactly. And managing the leaf canopy is crucial. Getting the right amount of sun and air to the grapes prevents disease, helps ripen the grape skins properly, and often, especially for the best sites or older vines, they'll harvest by hand.
For quality control.
Absolutely. Ensures only the best intact berries make it to the winery.
And in the winery, vinification. Is it all about keeping it fresh and clean?
Pretty much, yes. The dominant approach is fermentation in temperature-controlled stainless steel tanks.
By steel.
To preserve that crisp acidity, the freshness, those primary fruit and mineral aromas. You do sometimes see producers using oak,
Ah,
but it's usually older, larger barrels, neutral oak. The idea isn't to add oaky flavor, but maybe just a touch of texture, a little complexity, without masking the Sauvignon Blanc character.
subtle.
Very subtle. They'll typically use selected yeasts for a reliable fermentation. And this is important. They generally avoid malolactic fermentation.
To keep that acidity sharp.
Exactly. That vibrant, crisp acidity is fundamental to the Pouilly-Fumé style.
Okay, let's put it all together. The sensory experience. What's it like in the glass?
In the glass, you get that aromatic symphony we talked about. Bright citrus, blackcurrant, that elegant boxwood, maybe asparagus, and definitely that gunflint, smoky mineral core.
And on the palate.
High acidity. Really vibrant, almost bracing. Medium body, but with a very elegant, precise texture. And the finish is long, persistent, and driven by that minerality wet stone is a common descriptor. And always, always dry.
Sounds refreshing, but does it age? You mentioned silex helps.
It does. While it's absolutely delicious young, a good Pouilly-Fumé, especially from those silex soils, can age beautifully. We're talking 5, 10, sometimes even more years.
What happens when it ages?
It develops these lovely tertiary notes, honey, beeswax, maybe some nutty characters. The minerality integrates, becomes smoother, more complex. It's a really fascinating evolution.
Incredible versatility. So, food pairings? Oysters are the classic.
The absolute classic. Oysters, clams, any fresh seafood, really. The wine's acidity just cuts through the saltiness beautifully, and the minerality echoes the sea. Perfect match.
And goat cheese from
What's that?
Loire.
Create Crottin de Chavignon, Sancerre, Valençay local goat cheeses are legendary with Pouilly-Fumé. Again, the acidity balances the richness and tang of the cheese. Magic.
What else works well, beyond the obvious?
Think vibrant salads, especially with a citrusy dressing. Asparagus is a tricky pairing sometimes, but works well here. Delicate sushi or sashimi. Light chicken or fish dishes with herbs, even some Thai or Vietnamese dishes with lime and chili notes can work surprisingly well.
Great suggestions. Okay, brilliant. That's Pouilly-Fumé, Sauvignon Blanc, Loire, minerality. Now let's jump across to Burgundy to its sound-alike sibling, Pouilly-Fuissé. Chardonnay time.
Right, Pouilly-Fuissé, a completely different beast, really.
Mm-hmm.
This showcases Chardonnay's richness and adaptability in its own specific Burgundian home.
And it's from the Mâconnais region, right? South of the main Côte d'Or.
Exactly, down in southern Burgundy. Chardonnay's been grown there for centuries, part of Burgundy's long winemaking history.
And it got its AOC status back in 1936, quite early. But there was a big recent development, wasn't there?
Huge. In 2020, after years of work, specific vineyards, specific climates within Pouilly-Fuissé were granted Premier Cru status.
Wow, like in the Côte de Beaune or Côte de Nuits?
Precisely. It was a massive recognition of the quality and distinctiveness of those top sites, acknowledging their ability to produce exceptional, age-worthy wines. A real step up in prestige.
So the climate is still continental, but there's no big river like the Loire. How does that work for ripening Chardonnay?
That's a good point. It is continental warm summers, cold winters. But instead of a river, the key moderators here are altitude and the quite rugged, hilly landscape. This creates lots of different microclimates. Variations in slope, aspect, airflow, they all play a role in moderating temperatures and allowing Chardonnay to ripen perfectly across the different villages of the appellation.
And the soils are different too, mostly clay and limestone.
Correct. The main soil type is argilo-calcareous clay limestone, very typical of Burgundy. It offers good drainage, forcing the roots deep, which helps give the wines balanced acidity and that subtle limestone minerality chalk, maybe flinty hints.
And the clay part, what does that add?
Clay holds water and nutrients better, remember. So veins of clay in the soil tend to result in richer, more unctuous wines, silky texture, more intense fruit, maybe buttery notes, spice.
And silex, is there any flint here?
There is some, yes, but it's much less common than in Pouilly-Fumé, and its influence is way more subtle. It adds a touch of minerality maybe, but doesn't dominate the way it can in the Loire. This mix of limestone and clay is really why you get such a spectrum of styles within Pouilly-Fuissé.
You mentioned the landscape is rugged. Tell me about these natural amphitheaters I've read about.
Yes, the topography is really quite dramatic in places. Steep slopes, lots of different exposures. East, southeast, south are ideal for sun. And these natural amphitheaters, these bowl-shaped slopes,
What do they do?
they act like sun traps, basically. They capture and hold warmth, creating these unique, favorable microclimates, really important for getting Chardonnay fully ripe, developing complex flavors. And it helps protect against frost, too.
So Chardonnay is famous for being adaptable. How does that play out here? What kind of range do we see?
Chardonnay really shows its chameleon-like nature in Pouilly-Fuissé. It's an early budding grape, ripens mid-season, thin skins, but it adapts brilliantly.
So you can get leaner styles and richer styles from the same appellation.
Absolutely. Depending on the specific plot, the soil, the microclimate, and of course the winemaker's choices, you can find wines that are quite fresh and mineral, with citrus and floral notes, almost Chablis-like in some cases.
Okay.
All the way to much richer, fuller-bodied wines showing ripe stone fruit, hazelnut, butter, brioche notes, especially if there's been oak involved. It really runs the gamut.
Which brings us to winemaking. How do they shape these different styles? Viticulture first, similar approach to Fumé.
Similar principles, yes. Strict yield control is vital short pruning, maybe green harvesting, managing the canopy for sun and air. And manual harvesting is definitely preferred, almost essential on those steep slopes, and certainly for the Premier Cross. Got to get the best fruit.
And in the winery, I'm guessing oak is much more a part of this story here.
Oh, significantly more so. While some might use stainless steel, maybe for part of the blend, the use of French oak barrels, both new and used, is very common.
For complexity.
For complexity, for structure, for adding those secondary aromas of vanilla, toast, spice. And another key technique you see a lot is batonnage.
Lees stirring.
Exactly. Stirring the dead yeast cells back into the wine. This adds texture, body, richness, that unctuous quality, and complex flavors like brioche or toasted bread.
And malolactic fermentation. I assume that happens quite often.
Very frequently, yes. Most producers will allow or encourage MLF. It softens the natural acidity by converting sharp malic acid to softer lactic acid, and it brings out those buttery, nutty notes often associated with richer Chardonnay styles.
So the winemaker has a lot of tools to play with here.
Definitely. Much more of an active sculpting role compared to the often more hands-off approach in Pouilly-Fumé. They're really shaping the wine's final character with choices about oak, lees contact, MLF.
So the sensory profile. What should we expect aromatically from a Pouilly-Fuissé?
A generous nose, typically.
Yeah.
Fresh white fruits, green apple, pear, maybe peach, citrus notes too. And then, depending on the winemaking, those lovely layers of butter, vanilla, toasted nuts like hazelnut, sweet spice from the oak, often underpinned by a subtle, chalky or wet stone minerality.
And on the palate.
You'll find balanced acidity, not usually as sharp as Pouilly-Fumé, more integrated. Medium to full body, often with that creamy, unctuous texture from the MLS and potage. It feels richer, rounder, and a long, satisfying finish. It's dry, but there's a definite sense of weight and volume.
Sounds like it would age well, too, especially those Premier Crus.
Definitely. Pouilly-Fuissé, particularly the top examples in Premier Crus, has excellent aging potential, easily 5 to 15 years, sometimes much longer in great vintages.
How does it change with age?
The fruit evolves towards dried apricot, maybe honey. You get more complex notes of caramelized nuts, sometimes earthy notes like mushroom or even truffle. The oak integrates beautifully, becoming part of the wine's deeper complexity.
Sounds delicious. Perfect for food, then. What are the go-to pairings?
Classic pairings often involve richer dishes. Big roast chicken, turkey, maybe quail, especially with a creamy sauce. Richer fish like salmon or cod, particularly if cooked in butter. Mushroom risotto is fantastic. Vol au vent, anything creamy, really.
What else? Beyond the classics.
Scallops, especially gratinade. Lobster works beautifully. Veal with a cream sauce. And cheese-wise, think about richer options. Maybe a washed-rind cheese like Epoisse, or a good Comté, maybe not too aged. It's a great food wine.
Okay, fantastic. Now for the big comparison. The grand confrontation. We've explored both. The number one difference has to be the grape, right? That's the starting point.
Absolutely fundamental. Pouilly-Fumé, 100% Sauvignon Blanc. Pouilly-Fuissé, 100% Chardonnay. That dictates almost everything else.
And then the region, totally different parts of France.
Completely. Fumé is Loire Valley, central France. River influence, known for crisp whites. Fuissé is Burgundy, eastern France, Mâconnais subregion, the heartland of Chardonnay. Different traditions, different history.
And the ground itself, the terroir, different soil.
Hugely different. Fumé has that signature silex flint, plus Kimmeridgian limestone and marl, giving it that distinct mineral edge. Fuissé is predominantly clay limestone, giving it more body and texture with much less flint influence.
So summing up the styles, if you put them side by side.
Fumé is about minerality, sometimes subtle herbaceous notes, high piercing acidity, elegance. Fuissé is more about fruit expression, body, texture, often creamy or unctuous with balanced integrated acidity. Those are the four biggies: grape, region, terroir, style.
And the winemaking philosophy really reflects that difference too, doesn't it? One is about preserving, the other about shaping.
That's a great way to think about it. In Pouilly-Fumé, the aim is often minimal intervention. Let the terroir and the Sauvignon Blanc speak for themselves. Preserve that freshness.
Right.
In Pouilly-Fuissé, the winemaker often takes a more active role, using tools like oak, Batonja, MLF to build complexity, enhance texture, and sculpt the Chardonnay into its final form.
Okay, so if you're tasting them together, what are the dead giveaways? Appearance first.
Fumé is usually paler, maybe with greenish glints, especially when young. Fuissé tends to be more golden, deeper in color, particularly if it's seen oak or has some age.
And on the nose, the aromas.
This is where they really diverge. Fumé, look for that gunflint, maybe boxwood, blackcurrant leaf, sharp citrus. Fuissé, expect white and yellow fruits, apple, peach, maybe melon, plus potentially those notes of toasted almond, butter, vanilla from oak, and MLF.
And the palate confirms it all.
Absolutely. Fumé hits you with that high, crisp, cutting acidity. Very mineral, clean, precise texture. Fuissé feels fuller, rounder, often creamier or oilier in texture, with acidity that feels softer, more integrated. Both dry, but Fuissé has more weight.
And how do they age differently? You touched on this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Fumé develops honey, beeswax, nutty notes. The minerality integrates. Fuissé also gets honeyed, nutty notes, but maybe more towards dried fruits, caramel, mushroom, truffle, with the oak becoming part of the complexity.
So both can age, but for different reasons. Fumé relies on acidity and minerals.
Exactly. Its structure comes from acidity and the mineral core. Fuissé's longevity comes more from its concentration, its body, that balanced acidity, and often the structure provided by oak. Different paths to complexity over time.
Fascinating. Okay, shifting focus slightly. How are these wines doing out in the world? Is there strong demand?
Yes, both are very well regarded and enjoy strong global demand. Fumé is loved for its unique style, that mineral freshness that's different from, say, New Zealand's Blanc.
Right.
And Frisé is really sought after as a top-quality Chardonnay, often seen as offering great value compared to some of the pricier wines from the Côte d'Or. It hits a sweet spot for quality and complexity.
What are the biggest challenges they face? Competition must be one.
Huge competition.
Mm.
Fumé is up against Sauvignon Blancs from all over the New World. Fusé competes with high-end Chardonnays from California, Australia, elsewhere. So communicating their unique sense of place, their terroir, is absolutely vital.
And climate change. That must be a worry.
A major concern for both. For Fumé, the risk is losing that crucial acidity and freshness if it gets too warm. Ripening might happen too fast.
Higher alcohol.
Potentially, yes. For Fusé, the risk is maybe getting too ripe, leading to excessive alcohol, maybe losing some elegance and balance. Winemakers are definitely experimenting with clones, canopy management, harvest dates, trying to adapt.
What about trends in wine drinking? Are people looking for these styles?
Well, the trend towards lighter, fresher wines certainly helps Pouilly-Fumé. And the huge interest in organic, biodynamic, and sustainable wines is an opportunity for both regions. Many producers are moving in that direction. But overall, there's always a need for consumer education, helping people understand these names and what makes them special.
For listeners wanting to try some top examples, can you name a few producers to look out for? For Pouilly-Fumé first.
Oh, absolutely. The legendary name is Didier Dagenot. His children, Louis Benjamin and Charlotte, carry on his legacy of incredible purity and intensity. Also look for Domaine La Doucette, Pascal Jolivet, Chateau de Tracy, and maybe Jonathan Didier Pabillot for a more modern style. All excellent.
Great. And for Pouilly-Fuissé.
Top-tier names include Domaine Goffenshainen, really intense, sought-after wines. Domaine Ferret is historic and consistently excellent. Also check out Domaine Daniel Barad, Domaine Sommets Michelin, and the Brett brothers. They do fantastic organic and biodynamic work. Lots of great choices.
Fantastic. And if people want to visit, wine tourism?
Both regions are beautiful. The Loire Valley, home to Fumé, is a UNESCO site, stunning castles, the river, great for exploring Sauvignon Blanc.
And Burgundy.
Burgundy, where Frisé is, has those amazing amphitheaters, the history, the prestige of the climates, especially now with the Premier Cruce. It's a deep dive into Chardonnay right at the source. Both offer wonderful experiences.
Wow. What a journey. We started with two names that sound confusingly similar, Pouilly-Fumé and Pouilly-Fuissé, and now, well, it's crystal clear they are completely distinct worlds.
Absolutely. Pouilly-Fumé, the essence of Sauvignon Blanc in the Loire, all elegance, minerality, that signature gunflint.
And Pouilly-Fuissé, the richness of Chardonnay and Burgundy, fruit, texture, complexity, often shaped by oak.
And that initial confusion, it's actually a perfect entry point, isn't it? It highlights the incredible diversity within French wine. Every bottle tells a story of its place, its grape.
It really does. Which maybe leads to a final thought about the winemakers. Well, they're like interpreters, aren't they?
That's a lovely way to put it. In Pouilly-Fumé, maybe the art is in stepping back, letting the terroir, the stone, speak through the grape with minimal interference, purity.
Well, in Pouilly-Fuissé, perhaps the art is more about skillful guidance, using oak, lees, MLF to carefully shape and enhance Chardonnay's natural generosity and complexity. Sculpture.
Exactly. It's that fascinating interplay between nature's gifts and the winemaker's vision. So hopefully, with this knowledge, your next encounter with either Pouilly will be less confusing and much more of an exciting exploration.
Cheers to that. Go out and taste the difference.